All right, this morning we focus on the skills exodus in the country. Now, some blame government's equity policies for driving people out the country, while others maintain white-owned businesses are simply resisting transformation. Government, though, is expected to finalize amendments to equity laws by September. It will thus enable the Labour Minister to set equity targets in specific sectors. So let's now discuss this with Business Unity South Africa President, that's Mr. Bonang Mohale. Mr. Mohale, thank you for your time and good morning to you. What is then to be blamed for the exodus that we're seeing here in terms of skilled South Africans, leaving the country?
Of course, it's incongruent to talk about the skills exodus at a time when unemployment rate is almost 46.6%, youth unemployment almost 75%. So how then do we do the balancing act by ensuring that we give South Africans an opportunity for them to be absolutely skilled and experienced, whilst at the same time retaining the demonstrable track record that other people have demonstrated probably over the last 30 years. Remember that transformation measures and affirmative action in particular is a planned and positive process that is aimed at transforming the socio-economic environment that have excluded individuals from previously disadvantaged groups in order for these individuals to gain access to opportunities, including developmental opportunities based on their suitability. Therefore, there is nobody who is born and managing director, an MD, or a CEO. It's only when you are thrown in the deep end that you then learn. It can be that 28 years into democracy, we are still talking about a skills deficit in an environment where we have the highest unemployment rate in the world, the most unequal society in the world, the highest failure rate of small and medium enterprises in the world. Metumelo?
With that being said, Dr. Mohale, it seems black people are still saying they're being excluded. We have the triple BEE policies in place that I know that the likes of Business Unity South Africa, BBC, Black Business Council, the Black Management Forum, etc., continue to advocate for their implementation. But why then are still black people saying they're being excluded? What conversations are not being, honestly had about the reasons behind the lack of transformation?
In fact, it's much more painful than that, because when you look at 28 years into democracy, poverty, like the face of the pandemic, is still primarily black and feminine. This is demonstrated especially more so in the two most systemic and systematic risks that we are confronted as a country. One is youth unemployment. The 2 weeks in July are going to happen again and again if we don't address young people that have lost hope. The second is the electricity crisis. Right. So we are emboldened by the fact that in our conversation with the president has actually said 5 interventions are needed to address, amongst others, the issue of the skill. Number one, he said, these are aimed at improving the performance of Eskom's existing fleet of power stations. The second one, the president said, this will accelerate the procurement of new generation capacity. The third, he says, are intended to massively increase private investment in generation capacity. The last two for me is designed to enable businesses and households to invest in rooftop solar. And then lastly, of course, they are directed at fundamentally transforming the electricity sector and positioning it for future sustainability. How can we talk about being sustainable in the short term while building this notion of long-term resilience when we are still talking about black people and women not being adequately represented in positions of leadership? Right. Black people are 90% of the population, and yet they are less than 15%. Women are 51% of the population, but their representation in positions of leadership is less than 24%. African women, only 4%. Therefore, I think as a people with great natural endowment, we need to focus on two things: nation building and social cohesion. Without it, we can't even talk about us being a nation state.
Before I let you go then, Dr. Mohale, government we know expected to finalize those amendments to equity laws by September. This will then enable the Labour Minister, I understand, to set equity targets in specific sectors. Briefly, before I let you go, is this progressive? Is this in a direction that will lead us to seeing more transformation? Is it a good start? And I say that hesitating because I don't even know why we're starting at this point, 28 years into our democracy. But with the changes or the progress we're seeing being promised by government, will they lead us to some progress?
I'm hoping that it does. And I think as business, we'll put our shoulders to the wheel to work with government to ensure that this is executed timelessly. Because you see, great wars are won by good execution, not great plans. Good execution will save even a mediocre plan. This is the BEE Act of 2003, as amended in 2007. We started in the 90s around employment equity. We spoke about equal employment opportunities. We then spoke about affirmative action. 28 years into democracy, we've had plenty of opportunities. We now are in a position where we look at the more than 740 state-owned enterprises, and we say, had we put in Black women and we allowed them just to finish their term in 5 years without political interference, today we'll be talking about 3,000 Black women with a demonstrable track record in the more than 740 state-owned enterprises and state-owned companies. But sadly, when Kenya Airways and Ethiopian Airways are looking for their CEO, they are not looking south at this 85-year-old award-winning African airline called SAA because we killed it. But they are looking Europe to find a CEO and indeed an MD. Therefore, I think we are poor by choice, the choices that we have made. Even when we issued gambling licenses, because we never used to have them in South Africa, they were all in the former homeland areas. What did we do? We gave those licenses to usual suspects. I think it behooves all of us, and we are called upon to build our own businesses and hire our own children. It is madness for us to continue to make babies and then send them to a different neighborhood, for them to go down on their knees to ask somebody else for a job. Why did we elect these leaders if not to ensure that we improve the quality of lives of the majority of our people, but bring a better life for all, not just for elected officials? Thought-provoking
indeed. Thank you so much, Ntate Bonang Mohale.